Hello everyone. Happy Motivational Monday. My name is Kira. I am your host, and our opening song, of course, was Alicia Keys' Superwoman, which I feel like was a perfect song to start to end our Women's Wellbeing Month, which today is the absolute last session of our Women's Wellbeing Month. We have gone on quite a journey this month. We talked about how to build a relationship where women thrive. We talked about waking up our intuition and our inner guidance. We did a whole session on how to optimize women's brain health and why it matters. We also talked about how to step into your leadership as a woman and a little bit of the disparities that we face as women last week. And then this week, we are now stepping into the conversation of how to train your body with compassion, not pressure. So this is a really cool conversation, one for the fact that we get to start talking about like how do we physically take care of our bodies, and we know that everything starts with mindset, so we will be diving into mindset today as well. But next month, literally in 2 days, starts our self-esteem and self-image conversation. So I feel like this is a perfect conversation. You'll hear some of the topics and weavings of mine and Candice's story and how it also plays into the conversation of self-esteem and self-image and the way that women work their bodies with the judgments and with the pressure instead of the compassion. So we are very excited for today's conversation. We believe that all women should love their bodies, should feel at home in their bodies, and should be given the tools to live a really long, well, beautiful life in their bodies. So we've got the wonderful, the amazing Candice here. You all have seen her before. She opened up our actually this month with her man Philip, and they did the whole conversation around thriving relationships. So if you didn't get to see it, I'll drop the YouTube link in the chat in just a moment so you can tap in and dive into that. But Candace's superpower is empowering others to realize their dreams, navigate life's hurdles, and embrace their fullest potential on their own terms. Welcome, Candace, to today's conversation. Can you give us a little bit of an intro to you, a little bit of your story, and why this conversation matters to you?
Yes, it matters because I come from a place of originally training my body because that was my identity. When I was in a toxic, forget him relationship, my body and the way I looked became the way I valued myself because that's how someone else devalued me. And so originally I chased a perfect body out of revenge. Like, I don't know if y'all have heard of Khloe Kardashian's revenge body. And in a way, it fit, but eventually that became my defining thing, right? And so what I learned to do was love myself and treat my body as a work of art, not something that I had to change out of pressure. So for me, this really matters because my business has become about a whole woman approach. I no longer tell women lose weight. It's all about just working the masterpiece of your body already being a work of art. And so I want women to have a relationship with their body that's not made out of pressure, but out of care. And so that's my slogan actually is for my fitness business is your body is already a work of art. We're just carving it into a masterpiece. I want women to have a much better, healthier relationship with their bodies. Learn to love to train, learn to love to care for your body, whether it's rest or training, without feeling pressure, guilt, or shame. It's extremely important to me.
So we're both wearing our graphic tees today, and I feel like we need to shout them out because they both tie into today's conversation, and we wore them on purpose, like the beautiful masterpieces that we are. Do you want to show yours, Candace, and tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about your tee?
Yep. So I have Just Do It, and it's got all the greats, the girlies on it. It has Aja Wilson, it has Juju, it has my girl Shakari Richardson with the nails. I think I don't know all of them on here, but there's some greats on here, and they're all amazing Olympians, athletes, all that. And a lot of them are still girly. We'll get more into that in a second, but yeah, these are my girlies on this shirt.
Absolutely. And for me, I'm wearing my Be Kind to Your Mind shirt because a lot of the conversation around compassion versus pressure does start in the mind. So it's the way that we see ourselves, it's the way that we think that we need to show up in the world, it's the way that we think that others will perceive us. And it all is happening up here, which is so wild because it has to do with everything, like really from the neck down. And in this knowledge that there's a mindset behind the physicality that we live in this life, 69 to 84% of women experience body dissatisfaction. And I've been there. I still fluctuate through super satisfied with my body and super dissatisfied, but I'm getting more to the spectrum. It takes a lifetime to shape judgment and pressure of ourselves. So it will also take a lifetime of starting to undo that as well. But if you're a woman on this chat, even a man, if and you have experienced what it's like to be displeased and or dissatisfied with your body, you can drop 111 in the chat. I'm putting a 111 in the chat too because I know what it's like. But I've had to learn personally how to love my body because I feel like I was really taught how to hate my body. I think that society makes it very, very hard to see what is a real female body versus what is the portrayed image. If we looked at magazines and TV shows and things along those lines, we start to see that usually it's thinness that is what women are valued by, or beauty, or curves. And all of that can be a really detrimental foundation to set for women, especially when we're exposed to these at such young ages. So I was learned that beauty was my only value. I knew that beauty was important. I was beautiful, and that was my only value. So I downplayed so much of my greatness. And I also didn't realize that there's value in boundaries. There's value in saying no. There's value in being in rooms where your intelligence is valued. There's value in being rooms where you can speak up for yourself. And I had to learn that on my own because I was not taught that. So for a long time, I was hyper obsessed with my physical appearance. And I think after that part of my journey, once I learned to love myself, now I walk through the world and sometimes I think people think I'm a little crazy. I love myself to the nth degree. I will say how amazing I am. I'll giggle about like the things that I'm good at. And a part of it is opening up a dialogue for people to be like, oh, people talk about themselves like that because most people really truly don't. So we have to understand like what our health goals are outside of our physical appearance because if we realize that models are the ones that have set the standard, models have very different goals and very different lifestyles. Their goal is not to be healthy. Not that their goal is to not be healthy, but their main goal isn't health. Their main goal is aesthetics, right? That is not realistic. And that really, truly should never be a standard unless you're looking to get into the modeling world and you're like, that's absolutely what I want to do. But if you're a normal person walking on this planet, I would implore you to start to understand what your actual goals are because every time that I see a body that is thinner than mine or less curvy than mine or whatever, I have to remind myself my goal is health. My goal is living a long life. My goal is making sure that every day I feel good and as good as I possibly can that day. So as we're starting to decondition from these standards, Candice, and starting to understand, oh, that maybe we were given a little bit of a faulty foundation to work off of, what are some of the common mindset shifts that you help your clients make when it comes to their physical well-being journey and a little bit of that mindset as well?
Um, Girl, you talked about so much. I think the most important thing is the voice in your head. One thing my therapist always tells me is, whose voice are you listening to? I've been shaped by a lot of voices in my head, societally, family, relationally, all of that. And for me, I had to learn to drown out the noise. The premise of my business is mindset shift. A lot of people think fitness is just get in the gym, you can do it. No, you can't. If you could, I'm sure more people would do it. Mindset shifts is what starts you off getting to where you want to be. It starts by knowing what you want to accomplish. So, whose voice are you listening to? I remember having a member at Life Guides, and her goal was to lose weight. And I don't know, I felt like it was very surface level. I'm very inquisitive. And I said, is this goal for you? And she started crying. And this was our first session. And she was like, no, it's from my toxic ex-husband that used to tell me I was the F word. I don't even want to say it. And I was like, we got to change that voice. That voice doesn't matter anymore. He's not important. He never, honestly, no disrespect, but he never was. So the reality is that a lot of women are dissatisfied with their bodies, but it's because of this fantasy, this guilt, because of someone else. You, such as myself, I deal with PCOS. So like you said, the fluctuations in self evaluation, self value, that's real. PCOS makes things two times to 10 times harder to really have consistency in your body and the way you look. Hormone shifts and fat concentration, it's harder for somebody with a hormonal imbalance. It makes it harder to lose in the first place. So I actually learned to hate my body. And I'm still working through that, if I'm being honest. I'm not going to get on here and say I have it all mapped out just because I'm a trainer, because I own a wellness business. I then became hyper obsessed with my physical appearance. Everything had to be scale based. We'll get on that in a little bit. And then the messages I was absorbing was that like my body was my value. I remember working in a beauty supply, and there was this girl who was really curvy that I work with, but she hated it. She was objectified, and she was like, I want men to love me for the way that I am as a woman, the way that I am internally, not what I look like. And as I filled out, because I was 18, 19 at the time, I always remember that. And it's like, now as a woman, I want your mindset shift to be not what can I attract based on how I look, but how can I be most attractive to myself in the mirror by how I'm growing as a woman, even in the gym, even when I rest. My thing as a woman is always making sure that you chase your body for yourself, but that also means chasing your best self in your mind. My thing about fitness for me is not physical related at all. I actually don't go to the gym. I mean, I can bench 300, but the thing for me is that it heals and staves off anxiety and depression for me. So mindset shifts for me really looks like, what does this do for you when you're not being looked at by somebody else? What does it feel like when you're resting? Are you calm? Are you happy? Are you peaceful? Not everything about working out and fitness has to do with physical, and that is more sustainable than always chasing a body. Because let me be honest real quick, I have to get on my soapbox. A lot of the baddies that you see online, they all came off the same conveyor belt. And a lot of us are chasing that. We're chasing this aesthetic that isn't even real. Like you said earlier, Kira, that is not realistic. We all saw, well, I'm sure a lot of us saw the Top Model documentary. They're not chasing health. They're chasing aesthetic, unhealthy ones at that. So if you're looking at somebody that's surgery driven, you're chasing something that's already a fallacy. My mindset shifts for women dictate that we don't chase somebody else because they're already taken. We got to chase our best selves and what she wants to look like. So that's a huge mindset shift for me in my practice and how I serve clients.
I feel like a lot of us can relate to a lot of this. That's why we chose to have today's conversation as well, especially as two women who are very strong women, but who have also struggled, right? I feel like a lot of strong women, we're so strong because we've had to go through the struggle. And sometimes people don't see that. And then we think, oh, I have to be strong. I can't struggle. And that's not the truth at all. You will always fall down and you'll always have to pick yourself back up. And that's one of my favorite quotes by Lisa Nichols. She's a great public speaker, great motivational speaker. She says, she's like, I don't have to trust in my ability to not fall. I have to trust in my ability to get up. She's like, trust in your get up, baby. Trust in your get up. Like life does get hard and it's okay. So I say all of that to say that, wherever you're at, wherever you're starting today is a perfect place. And I, talking about the mindset shifts, I am a big advocate for the fact that everything impacts everything. So I was a yoga instructor for about 8 years, and well, I still am, but I was doing yoga exclusively for about 8 years, no strength training. And every teacher that I saw who I started like really deeply working under, they would tell me, you need to go to the gym. You are way too flexible. I could bend, I'm a hyper flexor, all of the things. And I ended up moving out into the middle of nowhere. I didn't have any yoga studios accessible to me. All I had was a gym to go to. I was like, and I was going for my mental health. Every day I would wake up and I was so anxious. It was one of the hardest seasons of my life. And I remember maybe being 3 or 4 months into the gym and realizing that I was changing as a person. Not only was I gaining more strength in my muscles, not only was I strengthening my core, not only was I strengthening my foundation, I was developing the same thing in my personality. So back when I was doing only yoga and was hyper flexible, I was hyper flexible as a Kira. I was a people pleaser. I didn't have good boundaries. I would let people walk all over me. And I didn't understand like what my true strength was, which is why we give our strength and our power to others and become people pleasers, the whole thing.
Yep.
once I started working out, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I can have boundaries. I'm not open to that. You're treating me that way. I'm sorry. You're gonna need to go. And
Mm.
it made my life a lot easier. Even in new friendships, I would tell people, I'm like, this is how I like to be loved. This is what friendship means to me. How does that feel to you? And I never had the strength in myself to be able to do that. And developing my own strength gave me my own inner strength. So with all of that, obviously that's a little bit of the mindset shift of what I went through, Candice, but I really feel like it's important for us to understand the physical benefits of strength training for women specifically, because there are a lot of ways to get physical exercise in, and there are a lot of ways to look thinner, to do all of the things, but there's a significant benefit to strength training for the length of our life, and I would love for you to dive into that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for sharing your transformation through training because there is such thing as hyper flexibility. And that's why not the antithesis, but kind of like the complement to being uber flexible is strength training. First and foremost, I gotta debunk this. I don't know if this is an old school thing, working out, even though I can press 300, you are not going to look like a bodybuilder. A lot of these ladies, they're at an elite athletic level. So if you train for athletics, you're going to look like an athlete. But the everyday woman is not going to look like a man. She is not going to look like a bodybuilder. I think that's some of the shame and fear involved in strength training. So we got to start by widening the lens. First and foremost, there's a very well-known trainer. I forget her name. I believe she's from Nigeria, but she says that starting with strength training, your mind is the most powerful muscle. So when you train, you always want to keep in mind what you're ingesting mentally as you train and what you're going for. It's training is far beyond aesthetics, and I'll continue to say that. But another thing that I have to constantly debunk in business and when I do my guide calls is that I have a terrible relationship with the word fat because for me, healthy is that there's an initiative that I believe in called health at every size. So when you strength train, it's the scale is not your best friend because muscle holds water. And so if you're training and you're trying to lose fat, just understand that when you strength train, you could be you're replacing fat with muscle. The scale may not change, but that shouldn't be the goal. It's not just about losing weight. If you want to reduce fat, there is some truth to visceral fat and all of that adiposity and all of that. But the goal isn't to be super thin. It's not to not be muscular. It's the goal is to be strong. The goal is to be strong. If you do 300 like me, cool. If you don't, it's not minimizing you. It's about relative strength. So when you build strength, like you said, Kira, you're building mental and physical strength, but also understand as a woman, strength training is very important. So the physical activity guidelines say you should strength train 2 times a week, but also there's a cardiovascular component to that. When you strength train at an endurance level, meaning like you have less rest periods and all of that stuff, you are also benefiting your heart. And as a woman, we can hold stress and all of those things. So strength training can sometimes, in conjunction with cardio, be cardio in and of itself because it can reduce the 30% of mortality that you can experience as a woman without it. And also, too, I know that a lot of us don't want to be that life alert lady, like, help, I've fallen, I can't get up. You don't want to be her, right? You want to make sure that you have strength, you have your bone density intact because after 30, your bone density decreases. So you want to ensure that you are continuing to train so that you're that 82-year-old lady who got robbed and she was like, they picked the wrong house. That's what strength training means. It's not just about aesthetics. It's not just about losing weight. It can be about body composition, but it's about so much more. It really, really helps your, like I said, your bones. It helps your muscles stay intact as you get older because a lot of times people, when they're older, the first thing to happen is physical frailty. They fall, they have to use walkers, stuff like that. Strength training helps you avoid those things as you age and as you mature. So very, very important.
My mom, oh my gosh, she turns 66 in 2 weeks. Oh, I love her so much. Um, but I had a conversation with her a couple of years ago. I learned that the strength of your quad muscles and like your thighs, that whole area overall, will be a significant determining factor for you aging well. So my mom wasn't working out, and my mom has always loved to work out for forever, but life just goes through its phases. And I was like, Ma, you need to start coming to these classes with me. You need to start strength training. It's all women that are your age, but you cannot fall because once you have your first fall, everything goes downhill very fast from there. So looking at our longevity, making sure that we have strength in these parts of our bodies is so, so, so important. And in learning to love our bodies, there's the difference between like, unfortunately, my mom still has an older mindset where she'll buy things that don't fit her. And she's like, I just got to lose 5 pounds to fit into it. And I'm like, that's a really, unfortunately, toxic mindset to be in. And I teach her, and I'm working on teaching her how to love herself. But I buy clothes that fit my body now. If my clothes stop fitting me, I buy new clothes. I don't try to make the clothes that I have fit a body that I had previously because now I'm a whole new Kira. I am a different Kira than I was 6 months ago, than I was a year ago, than I was a year and a half ago. So therefore, I have given myself to change internally, and I have given myself the permission to change externally. I am not perfect at any of this in any means. Candice has mentioned the scale a couple of times. I still can't go on a scale. I know that I probably weigh in a certain range, and if I go on a scale, it will send me in a downward spiral. I do not know why, but instead of going on a scale, because that doesn't matter to me, but the preconceived images and notions that have been in my mind for my whole life do still mess with me. I just look at my body in the mirror and I'm like, I love my body. I'm so grateful for how I look. I'm so grateful that I'm getting stronger in the gym. I'm lifting more weights. I'm doing higher reps. So that's where we start training with compassion instead of with pressure, is realizing that the numbers on our clothes aren't the numbers that determine who we are. The numbers on the scale aren't the numbers that determine how amazing we are. It's how we feel in our bodies. It's how strong we feel, how capable we are, knowing that we're a woman of action, knowing that we can conquer anything. So I could go on and on and on, but I want you to really help us as we're closing out the conversation, help us understand what does that pressure while we're training, how does that show up in women versus how do we shift with training to training for compassion?
Yeah. At first, I want to touch on that because what your mommy what you said your mommy experienced, because one of the things that identifies pressure is trying to chase the old version of yourself. I love me now. Back when I lost 30 pounds 10 years ago, that's the woman that I was in love with. It got me to the point I'm at where I identified with confidence, right? But that's not the same woman. I've grown as a woman. I lift heavier. I have more curves, okay? But that's my identity. That's my definition. And I had to talk to a member about this because she was like, she used to be a college athlete. And I was like, but that was a while ago. You need to want to be the best version of you now. We change as women. You should want to be a best version of that. Her name 3.0 is what I want you to chase. So pressure looks like that. I'm constantly chasing the 10 years ago me. That were you that mature back then? Do you still want to be her? Because you would have to be her in her entirety. And I would imagine a lot of us have grown and matured for the better. So chase the best version of you now. That pressure can look like you shrinking yourself. You working out just to be the physical embodiment of beauty, right? You care nothing about the inside. You're just focused on the outside. You're not doing the deep work, feeling guilty when you miss a day. Daily shifts happen, and that's why I hate BMI. That's why I hate numerical indicators of health because they are not real. BMI is very standardized, and it can create that pressure that if you don't reach a certain number, now you are not fit. I also hate the word fit because it boxes people in. That's pressure too. Missing a day, you feel like you've set yourself back entirely if you miss a day, 2 days. No, missing a day just means you get back on it the next day. That pressure shouldn't show up as trying to make up for or feeling guilty about deficits, right? Compassion is, look, my body deserves care. how am I going to care for it today? That's what compassion looks like. It's inclusive. So it's not just fitness in the gym, it's fitness in the mind. It's ensuring that you get that dose, which is dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins that happen in and out of the gym. How am I taking care of myself when I leave the gym as well? Rest and recovery. These things, I could be on my soapbox too, so I'll stop. But we got to understand that our bodies fluctuate and love ourselves at every fluctuation. That is compassion. That is certainly giving yourself grace to understand that you don't need to chase just something that boxes you in, but something that lets you be fluid with the way you see yourself and your health.
And in response to your question, Daishel, how do you train your mind to continue to exercise when you are exhausted and tired? That's also the compassion that we're speaking about as well. There are days when I'm exhausted and tired, and I know I need to go to the gym because it's going to put me in a better state, and I've just had a hard day. I go. There are other days where I'm exhausted and tired, and I know that I'm just pushing myself to maintain a number, whether it's like numbers of the day that I went to, numbers of the week that I went to the gym, or the number of calories that I burned today, or the number of steps that I got in. That's not the best. And I've learned that the more that I rest, and we did a whole sleep and hydration month starting in January. I dropped the YouTube link in the chat if you guys want to watch the previous sessions that we've done. But sleep is going to be a huge indicator for how happy you are, how healthy you are, how your brain works, the motivation that you have. So, also, if you're not getting enough sleep and you're exhausted and tired, then start working with sleep. We built this program this year to build on itself. That's why we started with sleep and hydration because it's the most important thing. So you'll be the one who understands when you're exhausted and tired and you need to go because it'll benefit you versus when you're exhausted and tired and you feel like you need to go because you're trying to achieve something.
Mhm.
So do you have any final words, Candice, as we're closing out the session? We have just another minute before I start closing us out. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, to answer the question earlier and just kind of an actionable step, pause before you set another aesthetic goal. And really, what I want y'all to ask yourselves are what are two to three reasons, and this may help you even if you're tired, 2 to 3 reasons why you want to be physically engaged that have nothing to do with the way you look. That will sustain you even if you feel tired, even if you, because what am I gaining from doing this anyway? That has nothing to do with the way I look. Those 2 to 3 reasons, your why will sustain you no matter what.
So beautiful. And Kelly dropped a great comment in the chat. Starting with small goals that are easy to accomplish is great. So if you're like, I can go walk around my neighborhood for 10 minutes 3 times a week. If it feels too simple for you, that's the perfect goal because you want to start teaching yourself that you can set a goal for your well-being that's going to make you feel good. And then actually accomplishing it is going to be so good for you. So,
Mhm.
thank you all so much for being here for today's conversation. Next week, we start our self-esteem and self-image month, and we'll have Tatiana here doing some vocal activations and some somatic work. I am going to drop our link tree in the chat, which is where you can find all things life guides. You can find all of our recordings, all of the registration links, everything along those lines. And I'm going to drop Candice's profile in the chat as well. Candice is one of our guides with Life Guides. You heard her talking about her experiences with our members, where people come to her asking her how this is where I'm at, this is where I want to go, this is where I want to go. Can you help me get there? And Candice does help you get there. So you can read through her whole profile, see how amazing she is outside of what you already know from these conversations we've been having with her. And there's a survey that pops up at the end. Please fill it out. We're sending you all so, so, so much love, and we hope you have the best week to come. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Have a good day.